don't mind, I would like to take a moment before I start presenting to you to share with you an uncertainty, a dilemma that I'm facing right here, right now, as I stand before you on this stage. You see, I have a problem with TED Talks. And this is why I'm still very much uncertain whether I should or should not participate in this conference. Well, I know some of you are probably thinking, hey, wait a minute there, wise guy. You're up there on stage speaking. And that's why I'm going to take a few steps to the side. I know the light engineer is probably freaking out right now because we're supposed to stand here. But I promise to keep one foot on the red carpet where I'm supposed to be and another out. I know this is not a presentational tactic to grab your attention or heighten your interests. This is a genuine disclosure of an uncertainty, and that's why I'm stepping aside for a minute. Now, I started to experience this uncertainty during our first workshop for this very conference a few weeks ago. I was sitting on a stage, one very much similar to this one, waiting for my turn to present my idea to a group of people. And while I was waiting in silence, I was bouncing back and forth in my head between the polarities of this dilemma, between whether I should or should not do this whole thing. And then came my turn to speak, and I couldn't help it anymore. I said, you know what, I'm not sure I should be in this conference. And of course I was asked why. And this is what I said. I said, as a teacher, I have a problem with soundbite information media such as TED. I really do. Now, this reservation is not in any way directed at the speakers who appear on TED or similar media, but rather at the form or mode of presentation. Because I believe that such forms of presentation usually pack and shoehorn thinking and experience into short, colorful presentational packages, adding a pinch of motivation here and a sprinkle of inspiration there. And as a teacher, I've often worked with students to try to critique and problematize ideas collected through such forms of media. You know why? Because I believe that such media sometimes make sweeping claims about the nature of knowledge and how it relates to practice and experience. And I feel that sometimes such media also turn thinking and experience into commodities. I think that fast food for thought industries are not too different from fast food industries. They often present us with pret-a-manger sound bites, quotations, aphorisms, which make sweeping claims about knowledge, the world, life, human nature. Take the term global village as an example. And in cultural studies courses that I often teach, I often encounter students coming into these courses with their own goodie bags full of sound bites and quotations. And sometimes see some students defend such ideas so enthusiastically and zealously just because they happen to identify with the energy of a certain presentation or with the charm and charisma of a certain speaker. I mean, don't most politicians thrive on these qualities, on such modes of knowledge? Do we really want our minds to be receptive and predisposed to such modes of knowing? And then I told everybody, you know what, I know of good teachers out there who work on developing thinking, and they know that it is a long, laborious, anxiety-provoking process. I really don't think that education is supposed to make us feel good about ourselves and good about the world. Yes, hope is important, but I honestly don't think that education is supposed to be a therapeutic experience. We cannot always start to expect thinking to be an adrenaline-pumping, rush-inducing experience. Now, I said this to everybody who was present during the workshop, and I told them, you know what, I'm not here trying to, especially when it comes to TED Talks. I said, TED presentations, I've heard, are supposed to spin heads and potentially change the world. Spin heads? Really? I mean, if a short presentation can spin ahead one way, then another short presentation can spin ahead another way. And the last thing as a teacher I want to see in a classroom are weather vanes. You know what those are? Those instruments that tell the direction of the wind, usually with a nice little rooster on top and arrows pointing north and south. I told everybody I'm not here to try to spin heads. I'm not here trying to change the world or move any of you to action. I would be extremely concerned if a 10-minute presentation moved any of you to action. So I told everybody during that workshop that this was one side of my dilemma. I also voiced the other side of my dilemma. I said I've talked to students, teachers, colleagues, friends of mine who have used TED videos and other similar forms of media to start conversations, to launch discussions on important matters and very crucial issues. So during the workshop that day, I voiced these two sides of my dilemma to everybody, and guess what happened? We started a conversation, and that conversation has led me all the way here, not there, here so far. So what I'm trying to do right here, right now, as I stand in this spot, voicing what has gone on so far, all the anxieties and dilemmas that went into this process, is I'm trying to invite a third. See, I could have either chosen to not be here at all and say, you know, I don't believe in TED and similar media and the underlying ideologies of such media, and therefore refrained from participating. Or I could have been standing right there and trying to present you a package of a certain thought and idea without exposing any of the underlying processes and anxieties and dilemmas that went into this. But instead, I'm standing up here trying to invite a third. And some of you are probably asking right now, so what does invite a third exactly mean? Please tell us. Maybe a better question to ask is, what does invite a third actually do? See, I believe we live in a world, between inverted commas, that is continuously presented to us time and again by the media and politicians alike through polarities, through either-ors, through binary oppositions. Take Lebanese society as an example, where each one of us is at once expected to be either-or. I'm not going to name them. To think in either-ors and to read our lives and social conditions through either-ors. And I think that our individual minds, thinking in isolation, are sanctuaries for such either-ors, for binary oppositions. I sometimes, when I think alone, I often imagine myself walking around wearing on my head one of these huge U-shaped magnets, you know, like the ones we usually see in cartoons, in Tom and Jerry, for example, where Tom tries to get Jerry to swallow a small magnet and then to trap. These big U-shaped magnets, I often imagine myself walking around wearing one of those on my head and trying to think through my dilemmas on my own, in isolation. My thinking often gets trapped in that magnet. And maybe this is why most media channels want us glued to television screens, because they prefer to speak to an audience of one person in isolation, so they can speak through such either-ors. Take, for example, الرأي والرأي الآخر. Really, is that it? Is that all we have? From my experience as a student, and from my experience with students, I've often noticed that the way out of this magnetic trap that is our individual thinking is not north or south, is not either-or, but straight out of such two-dimensional binary spaces and out into a third, unconcluded, intersubjective space located in the here and now. Paradoxically, to think in either-ors is to have already reached a conclusion. And this is why I'm standing here unsure whether I should step in there and present to you or not. Because presentations are expected to deliver something and then to conclude. Now, I promise you, I'll be off the stage in a second. This is not a cunning way just to hog the stage for the rest of the day. And I'm sure a lot of you are hungry and want to adjourn for food. But I'm not going to leave you with a goodie bag full of sound bites either. I know I'm walking a tightrope right now because some of you are probably thinking, so was this a presentation? But he's telling us it isn't. It kind of feels like one, but maybe it isn't. What I've tried to do today, as I stand here and not there, is to delay presenting to you as much as possible in order to invite you to linger with me in a pre-presentational space, in a pre-presentational moment. And if we can, if this moment remains unconcluded, if we can sustain it and delay its closure, then we can claim that we have initiated a conversation. We can claim that we have invited a third. Thank you.